Yeah, well, my biggest story is the place that we're going to start here, and that's the number 2 team in the country, Duke, facing off with North Carolina. The final score of that game was 87-70. At one point in the first half, Carolina was down 40-13. As much as I want to make this be about Duke and how impressive they are and how good their defense is, and it really registered just how big that Duke lineup is when you look at them against North Carolina, and all 5 Duke starters are taller than everyone except for North Carolina starting center, who is the same size as Con Knipple. That really, really kind of hit home for me. But the biggest thing, Jeff, watching that game is I felt like watching a NASCAR race and North Carolina was in it with a bunch of Fiats. I just felt like the horses weren't there. North Carolina didn't have the pieces that they needed to compete at the level that you would expect. And the gap is about as big as it maybe has ever been between those two programs.
Yeah, it's a joke. I mean, it honestly is a joke right now. I mean, that game was over 5 minutes in, and Cooper Flagg absolutely dominated from the outset in every single way. He left his imprint on the game, right? Whether it was defensively, whether it was passing, whether it was scoring. He ended up with like 21, 7 and 7 or something like that. A couple steals, couple blocks. I mean, they're up 40-13. Latula, 40-13. This thing was over, 10 minutes in, and it just looked like it was honestly Duke playing NC Central and not North Carolina.
It was complete and total destruction and domination for most of that game. And look, I have a ton of respect for this rivalry. I watched this rivalry for as long as I can remember in my 31 years of life. And Rob, you touched on it right there before we got into this. I mean, the disparity in talent, the disparity in size. I thought coming into this game, and I understand the idea with a rivalry where everybody says, hey, throw out the records because, this is a rivalry game. If you just looked at these two teams, this was a horrible matchup for North Carolina. It just was. You have undersized versus arguably the best positional size in college basketball. You have a team that goes through a ton of dry spells offensively up against a team in Duke that's probably arguably one of the best, maybe the best defensive team in America. And then on top of that, you got a team that tries to get out in transition and scores, 14, 15 points a game in transition in North Carolina against a team in Duke that just doesn't turn it over very often. Their shot quality is always high. I mean, it was a bad matchup from the start before this game even tipped. And I think it played out, them going up 29, Duke going up 29. I don't think maybe we didn't foresee that in this type of game, but I wasn't surprised at all by the result.
Yeah, I was surprised by it simply because I thought that North Carolina was at least going to put up a fight, right? Like it's a rivalry game. It's Duke Carolina, and Carolina just kind of rolled over and took it. And we've seen these Tar Heels before dig themselves holes and find ways to fight out of it, and that's not what happened tonight. And I just Goodman. It was one of those things where Duke smelled blood in the water, took advantage of it. Cooper Flagg, 21 points, 8 boards. 7 assists, 3 steals, 2 blocks. The first 19 points of the game he was responsible for. He scored 9 and he assisted on the other 10. It was complete domination from the tip. So that leads me to question, like, where does Carolina go from here? Like, what do you do if you're this Carolina team? You're 13-10 overall. You're 6-5 in the ACC. You pretty much have to not quite win out, but you got to be pretty damn close to that and beat Duke at home in the last game of the regular season to really have a chance to dance. That's where you are right now as a North Carolina.
Yeah, I mean, I've said this for a while now, all year it feels like, since we figured out that this Carolina team was not going to be much more than a bubble team. Hubert Davis, it's been a roller coaster ride. And I don't think they make a move after this season on Hubert Davis. But if this thing continues to spiral, which it very well may, because really right now, any loss other than, there's a couple in there that are okay losses, right? This one, but not the way you lost. That's the problem with this game. You didn't just lose to Duke at Cameron. You were embarrassed. And that's something that Carolina fans cannot live with ultimately. Now, again, if they go on some crazy run like they did a couple years ago, it's a different deal. But they're not going to do that. We know that. They don't have the front court pieces to be able to do it. They don't have the size on the perimeter to be able to do it. RJ Davis looks like a shell of himself. They did a great job containing Ian Jackson tonight because, again, of their size. There was no way those Carolina guards were going to be able to go in there and make anything happen. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I think, Hubert might get one more shot at this thing. But there's a chance if this thing goes bad the rest of the year that he doesn't get one more year. Or even here's
Jeff.
Conversation,
here's the thing.
Rob, there's a conversation between he and Bubba. I could see this. He and Bubba Cunningham, the AD, have a conversation, and I could see Bubba saying, "Hey, listen, we got to do something here. You got to make staff changes. You got to do something." And Hubert is a very prideful man, and who knows if he ends up doing it or he just kind of says, "You know what? That's not for me. I'm done."
Yeah, look, the thing is, and we talked about this a little bit with Kentucky and John Calipari, right? If you're going to make a change, you got to know that the guy that you're going to bring in is going to be worth making that change for. And I think that with with Mark Pope, it's clear that he was, but it took him a while to kind of end up there. And, it might have been even a little fluky that it kind of got to that point, right? For a bunch of different reasons. That's not the conversation here. If you're North Carolina, like I went through this list today with a couple of people. Where are you going? Like, what is I don't even know where you would go, Jeff. I don't know, because you're probably going to want to stay in the family, right? What is who would you go to that would be the right guy for this program moving? It's not Wes Miller. And not getting
Jerry. No, you're not staying in the family anymore. Yeah. The family thing is over. That's over at this point. There's nobody there. No chance. Wes Miller has underachieved significantly this year at Cincinnati. People were expecting them to be a top 25 team. They're not even a tournament team right now. So I think that ship has sailed for the time being. I think you got to go and again, make a run at one of the big boys. You're probably, again, you can start with Brad Stevens and Billy Donovan all you want. I don't think either one of them would do it. I think Billy, you're going to have to wait. If Billy gets fired, the timing isn't going to line up with any college job right away. He's probably going to have to sit a full year. Brad Stevens, I just don't see it. I talked to him a month or so ago. He loves watching his daughter, play sports right now. His son is a freshman walk-on at Notre Dame. He can kind of determine his schedule. So I don't see either of those. But the next tier for me, I would, and I know they didn't win today, but I would go after TJ Otzelberger. That's the guy I would go after for me. Again, his buyout is high, but I think there is something in there that maybe you could get him. Like, I got to check into it with a buyout, but I've been told there might be a chance that you could get a guy like that. And I think TJ fits Carolina more than he fits, the Indianas of the world. Carolina is not like a fishbowl with, like, Indiana and Kentucky are different. I don't put Carolina in that class. The fans are crazy a little bit, but they're not like Kentucky or Indiana fans. So I would say TJ Otzelberger would be the first guy for me.